Well, good morning again, YouTube. All right, guys, yesterday you saw that we were here. We did the tires and the oil change on the V Strom. We cleaned and lubricated up the rear caliper, inspected all the fronts. Everything there was pretty good. But a few more things I want to do to it before we take it on our ride tomorrow. I still want to flush the brakes out. I want to lubricate a lot of the switches, check the air filter, so on and so forth. Just go through everything since this bike is new to me. Make sure that everything is in tip-top condition. At that point, it's easy for me to maintain a schedule. So on top of checking the coolant, inspecting the spark plugs, stuff like that, I'm also going to probably remove these bags just temporarily, just so I can clean them. Because he had it stored in like a garage barn kind of thing, just a lot of dirt and mildewy looking stuff on them. So I just want to get them all cleaned up, as well as the rest of the motorcycle, and then I'll put them back on. But I think those will be a whole lot easier to clean off of the motorcycle than on it. And then it should be ready to go after that. Well, those came off easy enough. Just had a couple of straps wrapped around and tied onto the luggage bars. But now it's a little bit more open, a little bit more easy to get in here and clean and work and whatever else we choose to do. So while the bike's up this high on the lift, I'm thinking I'm going to focus on bleeding the rear brakes first. Usually pretty simple on these. Now I'm going to show you the way that I do this. I think it's relatively simple. So the master cylinder reservoir is only held to the frame with a little 8mm head bolt. I pull that off just so it gives me the room to move this in and out. Phillips screwdriver will get that cap off. So then you just pull off the cap and the screws. Oops, and drop stuff on the floor. And I just set it down here in a clean paper towel. There's also this next cap that goes on underneath that and the rubber diaphragm. Now, before I actually start bleeding, what I like to do is get rid of all this old fluid first. And for that, I just use a syringe. In this case, I'm using one with a small hose on it. I can suck that out and clean out the reservoir, fill it with clean fluid before I start the bleeding process. It just stops the mixing of clean and old fluid a little faster. All right, with all that fluid out, if you look in here, you can just see that there is some residue and sludge in the bottom. So we're gonna clean that out before putting fresh fluid in there. Now I typically just use a shop towel to do that with, but in some cases where you've got a really small reservoir such as this one, sometimes even just taking the paper towel, wrapping it around the tip of a screwdriver, you can get in there and kind of scrape and scrub that stuff out, get as much of it out as possible. And there we go, much, much better. Now we can put some fresh fluid in there. Now for fluid, I'm actually using the AMSOIL Dominator Racing Brake Fluid. It has a higher boiling point than the regular DOT 3 and 4 does, and it's just a little bit better performance. Do I need it in this bike? It might be a little bit overkill, but why not? You can't go too good of a fluid, right? All right, now you can see we got that nice, beautiful fluid back in there, but keep in mind, we haven't put any air into the system. Because this hose routes up, all we did is take what's in the reservoir and dump a little bit. So there is still old fluid in the reservoir, there's still pressure. Got an 8mm wrench back there on the bleeder. So now we're gonna hook up a hose to the bleeder to route that oil out. So I typically just use a piece of clear hose and I will route it somewhere through the motorcycle where coming out of the bleeder, it has to go up first and then come back down into whatever catch you're using. This makes sure that any air bubbles that come through the line rise to the top and don't get sucked back in. Makes it pretty easy. With that hose on the bleeder, we can now crack the bleeder open. And sometimes you'll see fluid start to come out. If not, we just pump the brake and there it goes. You can see as it comes up the line, no air in the system. Just keep pumping it till you see fresh fluid, all while maintaining the level over here. But you can see the difference in color of what's coming out and what's going in. Now, once it gets to the high point, gravity will pull it down the hose. And as gravity takes over, it will come down the hose and into my catch pan right there, so they don't make any mess. And I don't need to open and close the bleeder over and over again. I just pump and that's it. Now, in this particular instance, I wasn't able to get that bleeder open quite as far as I like, so I'm not moving fluid as fast as I would like to, but I'm just gonna be patient and let it flow through, and it's still gonna work. But if this muffler wasn't in the way, I could have got like another quarter of a turn out of that bleeder, and it would have just flown pretty quick. Flowed pretty quick, not flown pretty quick. You know what I meant. Okay, so I have pumped about 4 reservoirs worth through, and as you can see down here, it's coming out much more clear at the hose. I think we've got all of the old stuff flushed out. I've locked down the bleeder, pumped up the lever, and it feels good and solid. So now I'm gonna clean all my other components, the caps and the lids, put them all back on. And that's how easy it is. All right, with it all back together, everything's nice and clean and purty. And you can see how much yucky we actually got out of there. Now, this does hold a little bit more capacity, because this motorcycle is equipped with ABS. So the pressure side of the line coming out of the master cylinder does go up to the ABS module under the seat and then back out. If it's a non-ABS bike, it wouldn't have taken as much fluid to flush the whole system out. And like I said, this was easy because we hadn't introduced air into the system. If you introduce air into the system, it can be much more difficult. But if you follow some steps and you've got a properly good working braking system to start with, just flushing it is really simple. So now we're gonna move on and do the 2 front brakes. Same exact procedure. Now this bike, it feeds the right side caliper first and then loops over to the left side caliper. So we will actually bleed the left side first and make sure that's all, and then do the right side, and we'll only have to flush out that last little bit. Well, the front brake was nowhere near as bad as the rear brake as far as fluid quality goes. It did take more volume, obviously, to pump it all through, but it all went pretty smoothly. But I did notice, putting things back together, that these screws that hold the master cylinder lid on are kind of rusty. And these are so small, if I try to hit them with the wire wheel on my grinder, most likely I'm gonna lose my screw. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of that anti-seize and put on here and thread them back in. They're threading in fine, but that'll stop any further corrosion and help lubricate them as they go into those threads to hopefully not gall the aluminum threads in the master cylinder. And hopefully we won't have any problems when we need to take them out the next time. They didn't have no problems this time, but I just want to prevent it. And moving right along with the same theme, we're going to go ahead and flush the hydraulic clutch system as well. Exact same process, nothing changes, but you can see how nasty the fluid is in there. I noticed that over every make and model that I've worked on, clutch fluid almost always gets dark really fast as compared to the brake fluids. Well, that one took a little bit more work to get clean, but we got it clean. There was quite a bit of black residue in there. So now, time to put some fresh fluid in it, flush it out. Okay, with all that done, I've also taken some of the Amsoil MP spray lubricant, and I've sprayed it into all these little switches because some of them were sticky. Like this select one was catching. Every time I pushed it, it would hang. I had to wiggle it to get it to pop back up. Now it seems to be working good. Same thing with the flash to pass and the turn signals. They all seem to be functioning much better. Now, we're gonna move on to the air cleaner. Now, the air cleaner is under the fuel tank. There's an air box. The air cleaner is in the air box. I don't have one to replace it, but I at least want to inspect it, make sure it's all good, and I'll get one on order, whether I need one or not. That way I've always got a spare here, just because I think that's a good idea. So we will have to take off a few covers, a couple Allen bolts here and there so we can loosen up the tank. I don't know if we have to take the tank all the way off on this model. On a lot of Suzukis, you can just prop the tank up and access the air cleaner. I don't remember for sure on this one. It's been a long time since I've worked on one of these. So we're just gonna figure it out as we go.
Time
well, definitely not the easiest air cleaner I've had to get to. Not the hardest, Gold Wings are harder. But I gotta admit, I gotta gripe a little bit to Suzuki here, the way they did this. You see this mount up here? It's a hinge point, but they've got these tabs on here that didn't allow the fuel tank to hinge up. And granted, hinging up may have interfered with the bars anyways, but then the fuel line was at the very back, limiting how high you could raise it. No point in having a hinge point if you can't hinge it. You have to remove the tank. You can't just prop it up. Now, for years, Suzuki had the hinge at the back part where the seat meets the fuel tank. And all you had was the 1 or 2 bolts up front, and you could literally hinge the tank back and put a prop underneath it. Get to the air filter. You never had to undo any of the vacuum lines or the fuel lines or anything like that. Also get a new fuel line fitting on here that I've not seen before, so it took me a minute to figure out how to do it. But we're here to the air filter, and it looks like the gasket that seals the top of the box to the bottom of the box is garbage. So we're gonna have to order a new one of those. And it definitely looks like there is some debris in here. Remember, Gary had this stored in the barn, so there's definitely some fluff up in here, like maybe something was nesting in it. But the airbox side of it actually looks pretty good. So the filter did its job. It doesn't look like anything came through into the throttle bodies. Whew, yeah, we're definitely gonna need a new air cleaner. Like I said, I don't have one right now, so I'm gonna clean this out the best I can and reinstall it for now. But yeah, we're definitely gonna get one on order. All right, guys, this is actually pretty bad. Even after blowing it out and getting it what looks relatively better, as I take a pick and I actually go through here and scrape through these pleats, I'm still, look at all the junk I'm pulling out of it. You can't even see it until you scrape it out of there. Wow, that was a task for sure. Even with the pick, it was like a fine dance. It's like I had to use enough force to be able to scrape out everything that was packed in there. And it was packed in tight. It wasn't like it was loose stuff in there. It was packed in tight, so it took some effort to pick it out. And I'm using a steel pick. In fact, I use this very one right here. But it was a fine line on not damaging the paper filter element and getting the junk out of there. So I had to feel my pressure, feel what was gunk that I wanted to remove, scrape it out, and it just kept coming. I mean, there's a small pile here on the floor after me blowing it out, just what I had to pick out, just terrible. There's also quite a bit of debris left in the box. I got it cleaned out. Like I said, we're definitely gonna get one of these on order, but for now, it's going back together like it is. And I'm gonna have to order a gasket, order that, and I'm gonna order new spark plugs for it as well. And when those come in, we'll take it all back apart one more time and go ahead and just put the plugs in. But I know the thing runs perfect right now. So, of course, it may run better now that I can actually get some airflow. So I know that the plugs are fine at this point, but I'm just gonna replace them anyways. I just don't have them here. I just checked my plug box and I do not have any to fit this. All right, well, other than that, you know, it's filthy underneath here. It needs to be cleaned. But when we do those plugs in the air box, the new air filter, hopefully I'll have a water supply solution taken care of by then so I can really get this good and clean under here. I did check the coolant while I had this all apart. The radiator's absolutely topped and the reservoir is at the full level and it's engine ice that's in there, which is a really good product. So we're gonna leave that. I did take some of the Amsoil MP and I lubricated the springs and the hinge points here and the throttle bodies, as well as the throttle cable. I think that's really all we can do at this point, so we're gonna start putting it back together. Oh, and because we obviously had a rodent issue with something nesting in the air box, I'm taking a really close look at the wiring, make sure there isn't anything that has been, you know, chewed through or compromised in any way. And so far I haven't seen anything, but I'm gonna keep looking. Well, I just got it all put back together and I had the camera set up on the tripod. In time lapse, I was cleaning pieces as I put them together inside and out. And of course, it looks way better than it did. And when I went to go shut the camera off, it was already off. Realized I forgot to hit start, or maybe I thought I hit start. Apparently I didn't hit start record. So anyway, other than the engine and the swing arm and everything still being filthy, they're covered with sand, so I don't want to just wipe them down. But all of the body work per se is relatively clean. And I even did the dash and the windshield. Oh, didn't do the mirrors yet. Look at that. Some bird poo. All right, one last thing I want to do, put a little bit of chain lube on the chain that we cleaned last night. Now, like I said, these O-ring and X-ring style chains are actually all internally lubricated. So you're not really lubricating where the plates of the chain meet each other. Only thing you can actually lubricate is where the sprocket comes in contact with the rollers. And they don't need a lot because the roller itself is designed to reduce wear. So just a little bit of lube right down the center on the rollers is really all we need to do. I see I'm not even giving it full spray, just a light little coat. I'm barely pushing the lever down on the spray can. You notice I'm not getting it all over the wheel, just on those rollers. And well, it's relatively that easy. Now you just want to let it sit and dry, and it will somewhat solidify, leaving a lubricating barrier, but it shouldn't fling off when the chain gets going a certain speed. Well, I think that is going to be it. I got a couple tools to clean up on here, and I may run home, grab a helmet and a jacket, run it into town to a car wash and just blast it real quick to get all that sand and crap off of it. And then it'll be ready for tomorrow's ride. And if you guys want to come with us, you're more than welcome. Of course, you won't see this video till after the ride's done. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And until the next time I see you, keep those engines running.